Hello everybody! In this video, we're going to be taking a look at another fan-made hero. This is Elgrath, the Imperial Paladin. He was created by XXELHOMM, who asked me to say, Veznon is my daddy. Don't ask questions. He also went ahead and found a reference image for me just because he knows that I go out of my way to find reference images to use for the hero ideas that I get sent. So way to go the extra mile. Thank you for that. Now, let's get into his story. Elgrath was the most brilliant of all knights and paladins. However, he did not return to the kingdom in time from his mission. He witnessed only chaos and death. With his team of guards, he tried to find King Dinas, hoping that he managed to escape by one of the secret entrances. Elgrath, seeing the fall of Lineria, retreated to find Veznon, seeking him for merciless revenge. So from just this paragraph, you can infer that Elgrath is a revered, venerable knight who goes on missions to help save Lineria. But he was too late getting back from one of those missions, and has seen the aftermath of not being able to protect those he cares about. So, his willpower and ambition are even stronger, because they're fueled by revenge. You can use that to imagine he's putting his all into everything he does on the battlefield when you're using him in gameplay. Now let's take a look at his stats. At level 10, he has 390 health, so it's not that high, but he has a heal rate of 55 health per second, which is really good. And relative to his health, it means that he's going to heal extremely fast. His melee damage is 35 to 50, which is also pretty good, and his attack speed is every 1.25 seconds, so his DPS is a little bit lower than his damage, but it's still really high DPS. There are still plenty of heroes that have higher DPS than this, but he's on the high end of the DPS side anyways, so you're going to feel like your hero is doing a good amount of damage when he's attacking. He also has 45% armor, which helps add on to his durability, and a 20-second respawn time, which is nice and average. Now let's take a look at his abilities. His first one is listed as a passive. This is something that I like to call an innate ability, since passives are things that you upgrade but are always active. This one is an innate, so it's just always active even without upgrading it. An example of this would be Azra's teleport. So this innate ability is called Holy Mission, which has 2 royal guards that follow around Elgrath at all times. They level up alongside Elgrath, so they start off with 90 health, a heal rate of 7 per second, 2 to 4 melee damage, and 5% armor, but when they get to level 10, they have 162 HP, a heal rate of 16, 7 to 12 melee damage, and 15% armor. So their durability is still not that high. They do have a good heal rate, only taking 10 seconds to fully heal, and their melee damage is low, even when you combine both guards together to get 14 to 24 damage per second. It's still good damage and good to have around, but an individual guard attacking a unit is not going to kill that enemy very quickly. However, when you combine their damage alongside Elrath's damage, the 3 of them ganging up on a single lone enemy is going to be an effective source of DPS, because they're just adding on to his already pretty good damage per second. But when there are multiple enemies, they can stall 2 other ones alongside Elgrath for 3 enemy stall total with just a single hero, not even using any of his activated abilities, so that's really nice. And to top it all off, the creator provided a reference image for the royal guards too. What a sweetheart. Now for his upgradable abilities, I'm going to be jumping around a bit more to make some points more clear, so be ready to follow me around with your eyes. Starting with ability number 2, Blessed Armor. He gains 60% magic resistance permanently. The tricky thing about magic resistance is that no allied units in the game have magic resistance, so there's no way to tell if enemy attacks deal magic or true damage. The best you can do is infer from the visual effect. Projectiles from Twilight Evokers are most likely magic attacks, but something like Badgeman's ability might be true damage instead, since he's a boss and is supposed to have stronger attacks. You can't really be sure. Either way, the point is that he has the unique feature of tanking attacks that are meant to kill tanks. So, he can hold enemies in place that can't be stalled as effectively otherwise. In Origins, this is not as helpful as it would be in other games, since you have Bladesingers who are able to be invincible, allowing them to tank any sort of damage, regardless of what damage type it does. However, as a tower, the Bladesingers are limited to you needing enough money in order to afford the perfect parry upgrade. Meanwhile, this is a hero who is going to have this all the time, so he can tank regardless of what you spent your gold on, so you can use him to tank those specific enemies while spending your gold on other towers. And on top of that, since he's a hero, he can be moved anywhere you want, so he's not restricted to the strategic point that you build the tower on. so he does still have a very helpful use, in tanking those types of enemies. On top of that, he has ability 3, Morale. This is an active aura that increases the armor of all of the units around him by 15%, and it increases their magic resistance by double that, or 30%, as long as they're near Elgrath. So, if you wanted to stack tanking with Bladesingers, you can keep him near the Bladesingers so that he can buff them with this passive aura, so that way they can have magic resistance against all the attacks that they don't happen to trigger perfect parry against. This just makes him an even better tank, and even better at group stalling power, since he's able to allow other units around him to stall all of the other enemies that are trying to come through. So, this is a really helpful ability, and it can be inferred that this is going to apply to the royal guards that he has around him, so he's actually going to be able to help tank against up to 3 enemies even if they deal magic damage, thanks to those 2 abilities combining together. But you don't just have to combine Morale with Holy Mission. You can also combine it with ability 1, Lay Hands. Every 16 seconds, Elgrath is able to heal himself and 5 other allies for 120 HP each. Even though 120 HP might not seem that high individually, it's still a good enough number to make an impact. And on top of that, it makes up for the low individual healing by being able to heal so many units at once, as long as they're all in range. On top of that, it stacks really well with Morale. Because units are going to be taking decreased damage due to the increase in their armor and magic resistance, it also means that it's going to be that much harder for enemies to be able to deal more damage than they heal every 16 seconds. All of these abilities stack really well together, making it that much more effective for Elgrath and his allies to stall many enemies at once. This is the perfect setup for ability 4, Sword of Punishment. The first effect of this ability is to deal 225 area true damage. What a perfect way to take advantage of the hero's stalling power. Elgrath's buffs to units makes it easier to hold a group of enemies in place for longer, giving him the chance to use this attack to hit as many enemies as possible. It theoretically makes the attack more powerful than other area attacks with similar damage and range because he naturally sets up more enemies to get hit, dealing higher damage total. Additionally, he gains triple attack damage for 5 seconds, which means that he can land up to 4 attacks that each deal 105 to 150 damage. So, it can be used to finish off the tougher enemies that couldn't be killed with just the area damage. This is a perfect way of balancing out his skill set, giving him the means to deal area damage and high single target damage all in one skill. Even though the other skills synergize really well together, Sword of Punishment is the ability that you want to keep your eye on the most. It has the most potential that you need to work for in order to maximize. Finally, his hero spell, Imperial Support, summons 3 guards in a selected location. The moment they spawn, they each throw spears dealing 300 physical damage each. They stay on the battlefield as pure melee units for 30 seconds afterwards. I really like this ranged attack, since it helps make them stand out compared to Prince Dinas' hero spell. Plus, it adds versatility to the spell by allowing you to deal high burst damage, and then have the units there to stall more enemies. I imagine summoning these guards near a powerful enemy, killing it instantly with their spears, and then slowly taking down the other enemies around it. Regardless of the upgrade level of the ability, the Imperial Guardsmen always have the same stats: 225 health, 28 health regenerated per second, 20 to 25 physical damage every 1.15 seconds, and 50% armor. They are actually pretty weak without their spears, but if you spawn them near Elgrath, he's going to make them stronger. So if Elgrath's not near the enemy that you want to deal a lot of damage to with the spear throw, the spear damage might be the only thing you get out of these units, since they can die pretty fast to other enemies. But since the spears are so good, dealing 900 damage total, that would honestly be fine with me on some occasions. It's clearly intentional that 3 of them spawn, since these 3, plus the 2 royal guards that follow Elgrath, makes 5 total, which is exactly how many units he can heal with Lay Hands. So, you can combine these units together to make a powerful blocking force. Once they're buffed by morale, both guards become noticeably tankier, and with the heal, it will be a lot harder for enemies to kill them, turning them into actual proper tanks instead of easily expendable units. Because the spell has a 65-second cooldown and a 30-second duration, it has slightly less than 50% uptime, but as a spell, it can be recharged a little bit faster by calling waves early, so it actually has somewhat better than 50% uptime, assuming that you're calling waves early. And once again, I don't have to provide a reference image for the Imperial Guardsman because the creator provided one himself, because he's a Chad. The creator also provided some lines of dialogue for the hero, I'll do my best to read it in a medieval voice, but feel free to imagine whatever you think is most fitting for his voice. I'm the mettle of man. That's not enough to beat me, not even close. They fought as legends. Evil has a bullseye on my back the size of Tiger Stadium. We die for Lineria. Come, we're going to rip our way out of this. Yeah, I'm not a voice actor. That's going to be a one-time thing because this creator was nice enough to happen to be the first person to provide reference images for me. I'm not going to do that for anybody else, but I'll still show the dialogue if you include it in your hero submissions. The creator's summary of the hero is as follows. He's a very strong stalling hero who can deal with many enemies at the same time thanks to his setup. He could be very unique since there are not many, only Prince Dinas, heroes who call Knights of Lineria. Also, he deals with magic enemies, all while making his allies less exposed to magic attacks as well. His lore works with his abilities quite well, and he has decent synergies between his skills. I agree with that a lot. He's also a pretty versatile hero. Imagine having enough enemies to warrant building some sort of barracks tower to stall them, but not needing to spend that much gold to get a fully maxed out barracks. Instead of doing any of that, you could just use him and the units he summons to provide enough stalling power to block those enemies without having to build a barracks tower and instead invest your gold in other towers. But if you do decide to build barracks towers, which you probably will on maps that have multiple paths, then he's going to do a very good job at supporting that barracks tower by providing additional units that can help stall when one of the units is respawning, and be able to provide enough morale boost to give them increased damage resistance to both types of damage. And just by looking at the numbers on his abilities, he seems to be very balanced as well. He's not blatantly OP, but he's also not useless. So I think that the creator did a really good job balancing him. I have nothing but praise for him, and I think that if I was to rank him between all of the 57 heroes in the game, which would now be 58 if we were inserting him into the game, then I would probably put him somewhere in the 20s, like around Dante's tier. But that's just a ballpark guesstimate, so don't take that too seriously. In any case, my throat is getting sore, so I'm going to end things here. Have a good day, everybody.